Jose Mourinho, the ban collector. Behind the titles, the tactical brilliance and the cult of personality that defined modern football's most decorated manager lies a character flaw so profound it borders on pathological defiance. Jose Mourinho, the self-proclaimed special one, has been banned, fined and suspended by nearly every major football authority on the planet, accumulating disciplinary violations just as he collected trophies. His reign of calculated chaos reached its defining moment on February 23, 2005, when the Portuguese manager falsely accused Barcelona coach Frank Rijkaard of visiting referee Anders Frisk at half-time during Chelsea's Champions League round of 16 defeat at the Camp Nou. UEFA's Control and Disciplinary Committee responded with decisive force, imposing a two-match touchline ban and an £8,900 fine on March 31, 2005. Chelsea Football Club received a separate £33,300 penalty. The ruling prohibited Mourinho from entering the dressing room, tunnel or technical area before, during or after matches. The head of UEFA's referee committee, Volker Roth, branded him an enemy of football. The suspension forced Mourinho to miss both legs of Chelsea's quarter-final clash with Bayern Munich, the biggest matches of his Stamford Bridge career at that stage. For any other manager, this would have meant compliance, humiliation, acceptance. For Jose Mourinho, it became an invitation to criminal ingenuity. The laundry basket incident that followed transformed from rumour to legend when Mourinho himself confessed years later on beIN Sports. On match day at Stamford Bridge, the suspended manager entered the dressing room at midday, hiding in plain sight for 7 hours before his players arrived for the evening kickoff. The escape required the complicity of kitman Stuart Bannister, who smuggled Mourinho out in a metal laundry basket after the team talk. As UEFA officials patrolled the corridors, desperate to catch the renegade manager, Bannister sealed the basket completely. "I couldn't breathe," Mourinho recalled. "When he opened the box, I was dying. I'm serious, I promise." Chelsea won 4-2 that night, advancing 6-5 on aggregate. Mourinho's ban would define the blueprint for every disciplinary controversy that followed. In 2010, while managing Inter Milan, he made handcuff gestures after 2 players were sent off against Sampdoria, earning a 3-match ban and €40,000 fine. In 2011 at Real Madrid, he orchestrated deliberate yellow cards for Xabi Alonso and Sergio Ramos against Ajax, drawing a 1-match suspension. That same year, after Real's Champions League semi-final loss to Barcelona, Mourinho launched a vitriolic post-match tirade accusing UEFA of bias, levelling conspiracy theories that earned him a 5-match European ban, later reduced on appeal with the 4th and 5th matches suspended. The violations multiplied across England. A £50,000 fine in 2015 for claiming referees were afraid to award Chelsea penalties. A £50,000 fine and 1-match ban in 2016 for criticising referee Anthony Taylor. A 1-match ban for kicking a water bottle against West Ham. The cumulative financial penalties from English authorities alone exceeded £295,000. The pattern never changed. Mourinho's genius remained inseparable from his contempt for authority, his brilliance forever accompanied by self-destruction. Even in 2023, after Roma's Europa League final defeat, he confronted referee Anthony Taylor in the stadium car park in an incident captured on viral video. The ultimate legacy of Jose Mourinho's disciplinary record is not the bans themselves, but what they reveal about a man who could never accept that the rules applied to him too. Sir Alex Ferguson, the power of authority. The most successful manager in English football history spent 26 years at Manchester United constructing an empire built on intimidation, psychological mind games, and the systematic erosion of referees' confidence. His volcanic temper and post-match verbal assaults became so routine that the Football Association finally had to issue the ultimate sanction against a man who had made himself untouchable. Ferguson's breaking point arrived in March 2011, following Manchester United's 2-1 FA Cup quarter-final defeat to Chelsea at Stamford Bridge. Enraged by referee Martin Atkinson's performance, Ferguson launched an incendiary post-match interview in which he called the official not fit to referee a match of that magnitude. The comments represented the culmination of decades of systematic referee abuse that had defined Ferguson's career, a pattern of behaviour the FA could no longer ignore despite his institutional power. On May 31, 2011, the FA announced their verdict. Ferguson received a 5-match touchline ban and a £30,000 fine, the harshest penalty ever imposed on the then 69-year-old Scottish manager. The suspension was mandatory for 4 matches, with the 5th held in abeyance for 12 months. The ruling prohibited Ferguson from entering the technical area, communicating with his coaching staff during matches, or participating in pre-match or half-time team talks at the stadium. Ferguson watched United's opening fixtures of the 2011-12 season from the director's box, a humiliating neutering of his touchline omnipresence. The financial penalty, while substantial, paled in comparison to the symbolic message. The FA had finally drawn a line under Ferguson's reign of verbal terror, ensuring that even the most decorated manager in English football history was subject to disciplinary authority. However, the ban did nothing to diminish his legacy or power. Ferguson returned to the touchline in September 2011 and continued managing Manchester United until his retirement in 2013, securing his 13th Premier League title in his final season. The suspension remains a defining moment in English football governance, proving that institutional power, no matter how vast, could not forever shield systematic misconduct from accountability. Antonio Conte, the scapegoat of the Calcio-Scommessa. This was not a case of guilt, but a case of bureaucratic sacrifice. A manager caught in the machinery of Italian football's most widespread corruption scandal and crushed despite overwhelming evidence of his innocence. In 2012, during the height of the Calcio-Scommessa match-fixing investigation that engulfed Italian football, Antonio Conte was charged by the Italian Football Federation with failing to report attempted match-fixing during his tenure as manager of Serie B side Siena in the 2010-11 season. The accusations centered on 2 matches. The first, a 2-2 draw against Novara in May 2011, was alleged to have been pre-arranged by club president Massimo Mezzaroma for betting purposes. The second, Siena's 1-0 victory at Albinoleffe, was allegedly thrown to benefit the home side. The sole evidence against Conte came from testimony by former Siena player Filippo Carobio, who claimed Conte had told the squad they could rest easy because an agreement had been reached with Novara. Not one other Siena player corroborated Carobio's claims. The Italian football disciplinary process, which operates on the principle of guilty until proven innocent, handed Conte an initial 10-month ban on August 10, 2012. He had just led Juventus to an unbeaten Serie A title in his first season as manager of the Bianconeri. The timing could not have been more devastating. Conte, then at the height of his tactical powers, immediately appealed. On August 22, 2012, the Italian federal court upheld the 10-month suspension, though it acquitted him of wrongdoing in the Novara match. The ruling stated he remained guilty only of failing to report the Albinoleffe incident. Conte refused to accept the verdict. In October 2012, Italy's National Court for Sports Arbitration reduced the ban to 4 months, allowing him to return on December 8 rather than June 2013. The terms of the suspension prohibited any touchline activity, but permitted him to coach players during the week. Massimo Carrera assumed matchday control while Conte managed from hotel rooms, relaying instructions through assistants via phone calls. FIFA extended the ban worldwide in September, ruling him out of Champions League involvement as well. The consequences extended far beyond the touchline. Conte's home was raided at 5 a.m., television cameras waiting outside by 6 a.m., newspaper headlines declaring his guilt before any verdict. The ordeal left what Conte later described as a lasting scar on his life, a public crucifixion that shadowed him for years. In May 2016, after 4 years of legal warfare, Judge Pier Paolo Belluzzi delivered a fast-track criminal court ruling in Cremona. Conte was fully acquitted. The accusations of sporting fraud were ruled baseless. There was no evidence he had been aware of illegal activity, yet the damage was irreversible. The 4-month suspension he served in 2012 remains on his record, a permanent stain from a scandal in which he was ultimately proven innocent, a man destroyed by the very system he served with unmatched intensity.
Diego Simeone. Passion as pathology. Diego Simeone, the embodiment of raw, unfiltered footballing fury, has accumulated disciplinary violations across 2 decades with the inevitability of natural law. His touchline behavior, characterized by sarcastic applause, obscene gestures, and physical confrontations, has made him one of the most frequently punished managers in modern football. Simeone's most severe domestic punishment came in August 2014, when the Spanish Football Federation handed him an 8-match ban following his sending off during the Spanish Super Cup second leg against Real Madrid. The breakdown was brutal. 4 matches for tapping the 4th official on the head, 2 for protesting, 1 for sarcastically applauding the referee's decision, and 1 for watching the second half from the stand, in violation of regulations. The incident at the Vicente Calderón Stadium occurred when Simeone vociferously protested the delay in allowing Juanfran Torres back onto the pitch after receiving medical treatment. At European level, his rap sheet grew exponentially. In 2018, UEFA imposed a 4-match touchline ban after he insulted match officials during Atletico Madrid's Europa League semi-final first leg at Arsenal. The suspension meant he missed his team's 3-0 final victory against Marseille, watching from the stands as his side lifted the trophy without him on the touchline. That same year, during Atletico's Champions League knockout tie against Juventus, Simeone responded to his team's victory by grabbing his crotch in a provocative gesture toward the away support at the Wanda Metropolitano. UEFA deemed the conduct inappropriate and imposed a €20,000 fine, though notably stopped short of a touchline ban, allowing him to be present for the crucial return leg in Turin. In 2020, he was suspended for 2 matches after sarcastically applauding referee Jesus Gil Manzano during a La Liga fixture, a gesture deemed insulting and unsportsmanlike. Ball-throwing incidents, verbal tirades, and physical encroachment into the technical area of opposition managers compounded the total. The cumulative effect of Simeone's disciplinary record is a portrait of a manager whose emotional intensity, while responsible for Atletico Madrid's remarkable success, repeatedly crossed the line into sanctionable misconduct. Yet unlike Mourinho's calculated provocations, Simeone's violations feel less strategic and more primal, the inevitable byproduct of a man incapable of moderating his passion. His bans remain the price Atletico Madrid willingly pays for employing football's most combustible psychological force. Delio Rossi.
The strangling at Fiorentina. This was not touchline theatre. This was physical violence, captured on live television, ending a managerial career in real time. On May 2, 2012, during Fiorentina's Serie A match against Novara at the Stadio Artemio Franchi, manager Delio Rossi made a tactical substitution, removing 20-year-old midfielder Adem Ljajic in the 32nd minute. Ljajic, visibly frustrated, made a sarcastic gesture toward Rossi as he walked past the bench, appearing to mock the decision. What followed became one of the most shocking moments in modern football history. Rossi, consumed by rage, and launched himself at Ljajic, grabbing the player and punching him repeatedly before coaching staff could intervene. The assault, broadcast live to millions, lasted several seconds. Referee Gianluca Rocchi immediately showed Rossi a red card and expelled him from the stadium. The Lega Serie A acted within hours. Delio Rossi was banned from all football activity pending a full disciplinary hearing. Fiorentina terminated his contract that same evening, issuing a statement condemning the unacceptable and inexcusable behavior. The Italian Football Federation's disciplinary commission convened days later, imposing a 3-month ban and a substantial fine. However, the formal punishment was redundant. Rossi's managerial career was already over. No club in Europe would employ a manager who had physically assaulted his own player on live television. At 51 years old, Rossi vanished from professional football, his legacy reduced to a single moment of uncontrolled violence. The incident forced Italian football to confront the boundaries of acceptable touchline behavior, serving as a cautionary tale about the consequences of losing absolute control. Rossi remains employed in lower-tier football, but the Ljajic assault ensures he will never manage at the elite level again. The ban was the least of his punishments. Public disgrace and career termination were the real sentences.
Alan Pardew, the Premier League headbutt. In the history of English football management, no single act of physical aggression has been as absurd, as widely ridiculed, or as career-defining as Alan Pardew's headbutt of Hull City midfielder David Meyler on March 1, 2014. Pardew's incident occurred during Newcastle United's match against Hull at the KC Stadium. Meyler, retrieving the ball for a throw-in, brushed past Pardew on the touchline. The Newcastle manager, inexplicably enraged, lunged forward and headbutted the 24-year-old player. Television cameras captured the assault in high definition. Pardew immediately apologized, recognizing the catastrophic optics. The Football Association launched an investigation within hours. On March 11, 2014, the FA delivered its verdict. Alan Pardew received a 7-match touchline ban and a £60,000 fine, the longest suspension ever imposed on a Premier League manager for physical misconduct. The ruling forced Pardew to watch Newcastle's crucial relegation battle fixtures from the stands, communicating with assistant manager John Carver via text message. Newcastle United stood by their manager initially, but the humiliation was irreversible. The headbutt became internet folklore, replayed endlessly in meme format, forever cementing Pardew's legacy as the manager who lost his mind on live television. His career never recovered. Despite brief stints at Crystal Palace and West Bromwich Albion, Pardew's managerial trajectory had peaked before the Hull incident. The 7-match ban, while severe, was secondary to the reputational destruction. By 2018, Pardew was out of Premier League management entirely. The headbutt remains the ultimate symbol of managerial loss of control, a moment of total absurdity that cost Pardew everything he had built over decades in English football. The ban ended. The mockery never did. Diego Maradona, the outburst heard around the world. Football's most mythic and self-destructive figure carried his genius for controversy from playing career into management, with predictable results. As Argentina's national team coach, Maradona led his country through the tumultuous 2010 World Cup qualification campaign, a period marked by erratic team selections, bizarre press conferences, and mounting institutional tensions with FIFA. Maradona's breaking point arrived on October 14, 2009, following Argentina's crucial 1-0 victory over Uruguay in Montevideo that secured World Cup qualification. During the post-match press conference, Maradona, visibly emotional and unfiltered, launched an explicit verbal tirade against Argentine journalists who had criticized his management. The rant, delivered live on television and broadcast globally, contained profane language so vulgar that FIFA's disciplinary committee had no choice but to intervene. On November 15, 2009, FIFA imposed a 2-month ban on Maradona, prohibiting him from all football-related activities, including coaching, attending matches, or participating in official team events. The suspension also included a 25,000 Swiss franc fine. The ban meant Maradona was barred from Argentina's training camps and friendly matches during the November-December international window, a critical preparation period ahead of the 2010 World Cup in South Africa. FIFA's statement emphasized that the punishment was for insulting behavior and violations of the organization's code of conduct, underscoring that even Argentina's most legendary figure was not immune to disciplinary authority. Maradona served the suspension in full, returning to the touchline in January 2010. He went on to manage Argentina at the World Cup, where they reached the quarter-finals before a 4-0 demolition by Germany. The Argentine Football Association chose not to renew his contract shortly after. The 2-month ban was vintage Maradona,
a man whose inability to moderate his emotions cost him repeatedly throughout his life. Maradona's punishment was for being incapable of restraint. The ban was brief, but the moment was eternal. Another chapter in football's most tragic and compelling life story.
Sam Allardyce, the one-match England era. Sam Allardyce was appointed England national team manager on July 22, 2016, the culmination of a long managerial career in English football. He managed one official match, a 1-0 World Cup qualifying victory over Slovakia on September 4, 2016, achieving a 100% win record. 67 days later, his tenure was over. On September 26, 2016, the Daily Telegraph published undercover footage from a sting operation in which Allardyce, believing he was speaking to businessmen, offered advice on circumventing FA rules on third-party player ownership. He suggested methods to get around regulations and mocked his predecessor Roy Hodgson and FA institutional figures. The Football Association held emergency meetings. Allardyce's position became untenable. On September 27, 2016, the FA announced Allardyce's departure by mutual consent, a transparent euphemism for forced resignation. While not technically a ban, the FA made clear Allardyce would never manage England again. His contract was terminated and he received no compensation. The incident destroyed Allardyce's reputation permanently. He returned to club management with Crystal Palace, Everton and West Bromwich Albion, but his career trajectory had been irrevocably altered. The England job, the pinnacle he had pursued for decades, lasted 67 days and one competitive fixture. Allardyce's ban was self-inflicted through greed and spectacular misjudgment. Modern football's media environment, with its hidden cameras and investigative journalism, had claimed its highest-profile victim. The lesson was stark. At the international level, there is no margin for ethical compromise. Luis Aragones, the controversial mentor. Luis Aragones, the architect of Spain's golden generation and the manager who delivered Euro 2008 glory, carries a permanent stain from an incident that exposed the ugliest intersection of football. In October 2004, during a Spain training session ahead of their World Cup qualifier against Belgium, Aragones was caught on camera using racially charged language to motivate striker Jose Antonio Reyes, making derogatory references to Arsenal teammate Thierry Henry. The footage, aired on Spanish television, sparked international outrage. Anti-racism organizations demanded action. The Spanish Football Federation, under immense pressure, issued a fine of €3,000 to Aragones in early 2005. The punishment drew condemnation across Europe, with Thierry Henry calling for FIFA to intervene and impose a proper sanction. Aragones appealed the fine in Spanish courts. The legal process questioned whether the punishment fit within Spanish law, but the controversy remained unresolved publicly, and no sporting ban was ever imposed. Aragones remained Spain manager throughout the controversy, leading the national team to Euro 2008 triumph. His legacy remains irrevocably complicated. A man who delivered Spain's first major tournament victory in 44 years while using language that had no place in professional sport. Aragones died in 2014, celebrated in Spain as a tactical visionary. The racist remarks and the institutional failure remain a permanent stain on his legacy and on Spanish football's governance. Marcelo Bielsa, the martyr of method. Marcelo Bielsa's bans were bureaucratic rather than scandalous. The punishment of a man whose monastic devotion to football's purity conflicted with institutional regulations. Bielsa's disciplinary record stems primarily from his refusal to comply with mandatory press obligations, a stance rooted in his belief that media interactions distract from tactical preparation. During his tenure at Athletic Bilbao and subsequent roles in Argentina, Bielsa accumulated fines and touchline suspensions for skipping post-match press conferences, violating league regulations that mandate manager availability. The fines were modest, typically €3,000 to €5,000 per incident, but they accumulated steadily. In South America, he was sanctioned for overtraining players beyond league-mandated limits, a violation that underscored his obsessive commitment to physical preparation. Unlike the violent or corrupt managers who populate this list,
Bielsa's bans feel almost noble, the punishment of a man whose principles exceeded institutional tolerance. His suspensions never stemmed from rage, greed, or ego. They emerged from belief, from an unyielding conviction that football's essence transcended regulatory bureaucracy. Bielsa remains one of the most respected figures in world football, despite his modest trophy cabinet, a manager whose influence is measured in tactical philosophy rather than silverware. His bans serve as the ultimate contrast to the chaos documented throughout this anthology, proof that even purity, when taken to extremes, becomes a punishable offence in modern football's corporate landscape. From laundry baskets to lifetime bans, these 10 managers prove that even football's greatest minds cannot escape the consequences of their character. Subscribe for more stories on the players, managers, and moments that bent football's rules until they broke. The next scandal is already unfolding.